Started right now. If I can have you guys mute your mics, I think it'll like shift to where it's the active speaker. You'll see myself. If not, I can probably just hide the thumbnail. Where's active speaker? Okay. All right, I'll just, can you guys hear me all right? Sorry, I just had you guys mute.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for coming to my presentation. If we haven't formally met in any other presentations, my name is Ronica, and today I'm going to focus on starting with our heart, right? So my presentation is inspired by one of the chapters in the Crucial Conversations text that we had. I believe it was chapter 3, but I noticed that it was a reoccurring theme in that whole book, where everything is kind of starting from the heart and just focusing on coming from that genuine place. And that's something that I integrate into my leadership style, only because I feel like that's the most beneficial way to convey your message to someone, as well as just genuinely converse and relate to them. So with that being said, my goals for today, are to have us walk through an activity where we evaluate ourselves as a leader. We just check in with ourselves, see how we're going, how we're doing. And then I'm going to talk about 3 key principles that I've come across that I feel like aligns well with this idea of coming from the heart. Like if we find that it's difficult to get to that point or even understand what the benefits are of that, there are 3 elements that support that type of interaction with others. And then also we'll talk about how this can benefit, or how we can integrate this into our own personal leadership styles and our roles as leaders in our societies, and just whatever our leadership plans are moving forward, and acknowledging the significance behind starting from the heart, I feel like is very beneficial. So take this time now, if you have a pencil or a paper, pen, pencil, anything with you. And then, do you guys got that, or do you need a second?
I'm good.
Good? Okay. Carla, are you okay?
Good to go.
Okay, cool. So before we get started writing, let's take this moment to just check in with ourselves. So I welcome you to close your eyes for a moment and then just start focusing on your breath. Let's collectively take a nice deep breath in and exhale. Really feel yourself coming to this present moment of the presentation. And then I invite you to think of a crucial conversation, whether it be something that you shared in last week's discussion, or if there's an event coming up that you're anxious or concerned about. Just before writing it down, acknowledge how you're perceiving that event. Are you nervous, anxious, afraid of the outcome, different things like that? Are you equipped to handle that conversation? Are you confident in your ability to take that task on? So just sitting with that task for a moment. And then when you're ready, go ahead and jot that down, anything that comes to mind, whether it's writing down that exact conversation or that event that's coming up. Oops. And then think of different ways that you can approach that event. Okay, and then just give me a thumbs up when you kind of have that all written down, ready to go. Okay. Awesome. So, Paul, if you can share what you wrote.
So I have my presentation coming up today at 7,
Okay.
and I'm a little bit anxious about it. I think I'm prepared, but you never know how it's going to go out. So a little nervous and anxious about it, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm on the same boat, you know, just focusing on trying to get this project done, and all the emotions come with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about you, Carla?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I have a pretty big like training day coming up where I have to come up with everything that we're going to cover, and I have to probably make a few PowerPoints and then, you know, prepare myself so that I know what kind of resources they have. So feeling a little bit like overwhelmed about it, but just one step at a time.
Right. Most definitely. Thank you guys for sharing. So in the upcoming slides, I'll talk about these 3 elements of perfect examples of different things that happen in life, right? So Paul, with your concern about your presentation, I'm on the same boat. You can't tell, but I'm frantic inside, right? So that, and then Carla, you have your presentation, your training day. That's a lot. Odds are you're in charge of many people. There's many participants, and you don't want to mess up, basically, right? Most definitely. So 3 key principles that I'm going to talk about today are derived from this TED Talk that I watched on YouTube from this man named Michael Brody Waite. And what caught my eye about this presentation was the title. So the title of the video was "Great Leaders Do What Drug Addicts Do." And it's like, interesting, what is that, right? So thinking about that point of recovery. So what are different things that drug addicts do to recover? He basically talks about his life story and how he went from waking up in the morning, doing drugs and alcohol, and becoming homeless, and just focusing on that. And then he had somebody in his program tell him, you need to do these 3 things, or else you're every single day, or else you're not going to make it. And that's heavy. It's like, whoa. So the upcoming slides are just the title of each thing. I encourage you to just write them down and keep these principles in mind as you go about your tasks. So the first one being be authentic, right? So in this slide, I have a quote here from Brene Brown, and it's, "Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are," right? So coming at any task that we're faced with as leaders and just humans in general, coming from a place of authenticity, elaborating on how you feel about a subject, your expectations and different things like that, being upfront about what you're focused on dissipates any type of insignificant thing that can deter you from your goal, right? So you're not beating around the bush, you're genuinely being upfront. This is what I expect as, like, in this specific thing. So for example, my crucial conversation that I wrote about in my discussion was having to give my resignation to my current employer, right? I've only been here for no more than 5 months, and it's just overwhelming to have that conversation with somebody, right? You never want to say, "Okay, bye, I quit." Of course, I didn't go about it. I actually had this conversation yesterday, and that anxiety, that rush of just, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? This obstacle is insurmountable. I can't overcome this, right? Acknowledging that the best way to convey this information is to just genuinely be upfront, be authentic. Why is it that I want to resign, right? So bullet pointing, okay, one main thing is I want to grow in my profession. I want to be able to take on a more managerial role because I'm focused on my leadership studies opposed to just working in the classroom with my students, though that is very rewarding. And with that being said, right, it was kind of easier to have those written down, written out, and I was able to just meet with her face to face and talk about why I made this decision, right? So being authentic is the first one. The second one is doing uncomfortable work, right? So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Game of Thrones, but I took this picture from this last episode, and it's basically overcoming your fears of that obstacle, right? So Paul, you have your presentation at 7 tonight. Whether you like it or not, you're going to take the bull by its horns and just go with it, right?
Have to.
Yeah, right? Or else we're not going to get grades, and that's not cool. We want to graduate, right? So very uncomfortable, especially if, like, this is my first presentation that I've done online, right? So I'm uncomfortable, but as you get into that event, you kind of like realize that the way that you've perceived this conflict or this obstacle is nowhere near the like actual gravity of the situation, right? So it's just a matter of preparation and acknowledging that you have to go with it, right?
True.
Yeah. So doing uncomfortable work is the second thing. So what are some uncomfortable things that you guys can think of that you're preparing for in these events that are coming up for you guys?
I will. It's more of another person. We had an employee under my supervision in the office. She was ready to promote, and she was panicking about the interview process. And I told her what you're telling me right now. You need to be to overcome and be okay with being uncomfortable. And one of the things that I told her is, don't worry, at the end of the day, the people on the other side of the table, they're just people. They might have degrees, they might have power over getting who you are, but at the end of the day, they're just people. So just talk to them. Be yourself, be authentic, and just overcome that and be comfortable with what you do. And she's having the interview next week. But she felt, after we talked, she felt a lot more confident about it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens, but at least that fact that, yeah, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable is not that, once you realize it's not that bad.
Right. And then what about with you, Carla?
So I was really nervous about my presentation before I gave it, but having done it, and then I attended 2 presentations on Saturday, and then I have both yours today.
Yeah.
It made me realize that I was really glad that I did a dry run before I gave my presentation. That made me feel more comfortable, but it's nice that we all are going through the same process together. So I feel like we all have a lot of empathy for each other's experience with the presentation. So after I gave my presentation, I realized some of my nerves were really kind of unnecessary or unfounded, because like I feel like we have a really good class, and we all have a lot of empathy for each other. So we completely understand. I think when it's your presentation, you're super nervous, but when it's not, and you know the nerves that come with giving the presentation, then you start to feel like, oh, okay, we're all just starting out. So it's nice to kind of go through it together.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for your guys' input. That, like, I felt I was all in the feels right there. Like I felt very comforted by that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, right, acknowledging, like we just said, we're all going through this process. We're all human, essentially, at the end of the day, right? How do we want to be treated? We want people to be genuine with us, right? The last thing we want is somebody to make it appear as if our interests are in their mind, right? And then turning around and seeing that this person wasn't being authentic, right? So, but that's a fact of life. Different things like that occur, and that kind of ties into the next one, the last one, which is surrender the outcome, right? Whether or not we're going to be betrayed by someone, or whether or not Paul, the lady that you were talking about, if she's getting her position, she's doing her interview, right? Releasing any type of outcome, whether it be, oh, I anticipate that this is going to be the best thing. I acknowledge that by me saying this specific thing, the person that I'm being interviewed by is going to agree with me, right? There is no way possible for us to pinpoint or direct the outcome. Right. I mean, there is, we can focus on being authentic. We can acknowledge that this is a difficult thing, and instead of worrying or fretting about something, we can just take it as it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard. This is the hardest one for me, right? Because as I was preparing for this presentation, I was like, I need this to be the best thing ever. Or when I was speaking to my manager yesterday, or thinking about that conversation, anticipating or hoping that it would end up the way that it did, right? So thankfully, she was very receptive and happy for me, but equally sad because she didn't want to see me go. And right, that's a difficult thing, but acknowledging where you are and what you need, or in order for that growth, right? So really just focusing on that, and not having that empathy for the person, of course, and how they're going to respond, but not banking fully on them responding one way or another. Just
right.
leaving it to chance, leaving it to God, whatever you believe in, right?
Mm-hmm. As I was telling one of my coworker, I was telling her, what's the worst that could happen? Is that they don't hire you and you continue working for us for another whatever time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not risking that much. She has a decent job right now. It would be a promotion. Yeah, it's always good to get promoted. But the worst case scenario, you're in the same spot as you are right now.
Right.
So
yeah.
I thought, yeah, don't be too nervous about it. It's what it is.
Right.
Do your best and surrender to the outcome.
Right. Cool. So those were the 3 steps, or the 3 different principles. And I just wanted to add this, why is this important as a leader, right? So the first image, you see a happy man with a happy handshake, right? So that's, hey, I am happy with the way that this interaction concluded, right? That level of respect, right? I understand that this person came from an authentic point of view. This was a difficult conversation for them because it was a difficult conversation for me. They might have not acknowledged that, but in the end, they were responsible or respectful enough to take that chance and let them know what was happening, right? Me, for example, I would like to resign, right, under these circumstances. And that kind of ties into the part in chapter 3 of Crucial Conversations where it says the result and, right? So how can I give my resignation to my boss and still demonstrate that I am a team player up until the day that I leave, right? So really coming from that perspective and acknowledging how much more effective your communication will be coming from that authentic point of view. right? So, and then with the second image, just that peace of mind. Like, I gave this presentation all that I could. Paul, for example, the interview, right? She can give all, right? Give her all and do that, and just know that she did the best that she could and surrender that outcome, right? So yeah. So conclusion, right? Just focusing on how this, acknowledging those three things and being compassionate, being honest up front, and responsible for what you desire as a leader, right? And just focusing on how much better interactions with other people will be by coming from that authentic and heartfelt position, right? Opposed to just being harsh and brash and I have all this power and authority and this is how it's going to be. Maybe they don't care about the outcome in that situation, but there's like that lack of compassion, I think. And maybe I don't know. It's just another story, right? So here are my references. If you wanted to look up that TED Talk, I recommend it. It's 18 minutes. Great leaders do what drug addicts do. Very impactful, nice speaker. And other than that, do you guys have any questions about the presentation or different things?
That was pretty good.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah. Great job.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe I'll leave it with one question just to ask you guys, how would you implement these three principles, or would you, as you go about your tasks that you are, Paul, your presentation, and then Carla, your training?
Well, moving forward to my presentation tonight, I will definitely be uncomfortable, but I'll do my best, and I'll come from who I am. And are you going to be there? I know, Carla, you are.
I'm teaching tonight, so I would love to, but my class starts at 6, so I can't.
That's fine. So I'll try to be authentic and be myself. And I think coming from there, it's going to make it a little easier. Because if I pretend to be somebody that I'm not, it's double the work.
Right.
You are pretending and presenting. So, and then the last point is, yeah, it's going to be what it's going to be. And I hope you guys will understand where I'm coming from and enjoy and maybe learn a little bit from my presentation. So whatever it is, it's going to be.
Nice.
Yeah. So for me, I think that probably the part where I'll be applying the do uncomfortable work is the transition from feeling like, wow, I have to come up with an entire day's worth of training, and feeling a little bit like it's a lot of work, to just breaking it down into incremental, like small steps that you can take, and getting over that hurdle of like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do, and just doing what you can. So yeah, I think that at the end of the day, changing my mindset from like, I have to make this the best training ever, to I'm still around as a resource and I'll still be able to answer questions, down the road, to kind of make myself feel a little bit less pressured will probably help. So surrendering to the outcome.
Right. All right. Well, thank you guys for your input, and thank you for viewing my presentation. I hope it was impactful, and I wish you the best on your presentation, Paul, and both of you as we continue our studies, right?
Likewise.
Thank you. All right. I'll see you guys around.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.